Am I being heard? What is this Bluetooth connected to? That can't be good. There's Bluetooth somewhere in here. What's happening? What's happening? Alright, well this is a real juggling match here. Is going on with that Bluetooth. Shouldn't be any Bluetooth in here. Oh, okay, so we have a chat here. Old School Dave, hello, my wonderful YouTube friend. Well, it was suggested here by a good friend of the show that we maybe, since we have a couple of weeks before we drop any new content, that we do some sort of a live content here. Trying to identify where this Bluetooth is coming from. That can't be good. Anyway, so I thought after this evening, we're over at Chicago's The Comedy Bar for some comedy. Boy, if I could only identify where that Bluetooth is coming from. It does appear that I'm live, though. Okay. So we've made it, so I'll be able to use that as a way to watch the live chat. This is more of a test, if anything, here. I'm not sure about how a live format might operate. But we'll do a little test here, maybe play a game of chess or two and see what happens. But I am able to see the chat. Why don't we give it a quick test here? Gonna get that camera on as soon as we figure out how that operates here. Just be a few moments. And that desktop audio might be a little loud. Why don't we see if we can put on maybe some background music? Oh, well, that's great that everybody's able to hear. Hello, Testes, Testes, 1, 2, and Chris. Sounds great. Well, that's great. Thanks so much. What is some music that they allow to play on YouTube? I'm not sure even how you go about playing some background music. Oh, why don't I figure out how to get the camera on first? That would be a good place to start. Why don't we look here? I'm looking at this setting. Here we go. Right. No, that's not the button that I want. I want this button. No, that can't be the right button. Get out of here. Excuse me. Oh, where am I? Oh, wow. Now we are really lost. Uh-oh. Okay, now we're here. Is everything okay? Hello. Hello. Did that work? No? We're so close though. We're so close. Just a moment away and I'll be able to. We are really working to try to figure this out here. Maybe we go. Oh, one more thing here. Oh, excuse me. I'm gonna have to walk away from the microphone, it sounds like. All right. Well, isn't that wonderful? Oh, hello. 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 So if anybody has any questions, I guess I'll just give a brief. I just thought, somebody had suggested that maybe I try to do something live, interacting with the audience, and I'm playing a few games. I'm on quite a losing streak here, but I'm a big fan of this chess. We've of course been working on some of the things that we're planning on with the show. So we have a reality show plans that we've already started to film, and we have some projects there. I'm getting into a bit of stand-up comedy, which is somewhat exciting, and we're meeting new people and getting into that project, so that's something that's being worked on. And, of course, we have our live show coming up, which is actually going to be the next show that we put out. So it's a couple of weeks away now, actually 2 weeks from today, our David Collins 30-minute half-hour live show. Oh, what was I doing? I was doing something with the music here. That's right. Doing something music-related. Why don't I put on an old soundtrack from an old game that I played growing up here? Some of you may remember, and if you don't, that's fine. It's a fun listen. Let's take a little listen. Whoa. It might be a little loud, though. We'll turn... No, I think that was a good volume. Perfect. Well, we have this playing in the background here, and I just thought I'll be able to take any questions from the audience here, well, as long as I'm just hanging out, playing a few games of chess this evening. Why not go live here if we can? It actually wasn't as hard as I thought it might be. We took a little bit to take the time to figure it out, but of course it appears that I'm live. Interestingly enough, when you first go live on YouTube, it tries to trick you. It said, oh, you're not going to be able to go live for 24 hours. It said 24 hours. That's 23 hours and 50-something minutes from now. That's almost unacceptable. So I did a little extra clicking here, and we found ourselves live. Will you play Wildman Chris in chess sometime? Well, that's a great question, old school Dave. You'll have to tell me who Wildman Chris is. Maybe he'd be a great guest to have on the show. That'd be nice, and maybe we could even just play some chess together. That'd be nice too. Turn this down a little bit here. Maybe it's just for me. If anybody thinks that there's something wrong with the volume, but I'm going to go ahead and jump into this first live game of chess here. Now, of course, you can see by this rating, about a 1100 to a 1200 rated player. I'm on a big losing streak right now, though, so hopefully we can turn that around. Boy, this being live thing is pretty nice. Now, people just do this. They go live and they say, oh, I'm live now, and they start doing their show. Maybe we'll have to start thinking about a way to do our show in some way. Of course, we have our live show coming up, but that's certainly a much different kind of live. Now, what I like to do when I play chess here, if they decide to go that type of opening, it's a very, the king's pawn is a very common opening, and I could just play it as most people would, but I like to give them this pawn. That way I could get my queen out. I believe it's called a PS. There's something going on with the name there. It's an interesting name, and he right away is going to... So we're already moving this game right along. Anyway, not the strongest player, but it is a fun game. I'm a big fan of board games. Not a lot of people know that about me. Of course, I've talked a lot on the show. I'm a big fan of old school games, you might say, because I've talked about playing kick the can, but board games are something I'm a big fan of, these board games. What was I playing recently? I was playing Battlefield recently, actually, and that was a fun kickback there. Battlefield, not an easy game, much more difficult than I remember. We're going to get this up. Now, I think he's already made a big mistake here, if you ask me, but I'm not too sure. Now, anybody out there listening, I see we have 6 viewers in the audience. That's interesting. Are you a fan of chess? Let me know. If anybody's in that live chat. If anybody recognizes this soundtrack, a fun soundtrack, of course, a very popular one many people will remember. Now, of course, like I said, I think this guy's made a lot of mistakes already. I'm not sure exactly what he's going for here, but we're going to go ahead and just push that knight back, I think. Well, let's ask ourselves, what's next? What is he trying to accomplish? Because we might just be able to develop our pieces and ignore everything that he's gotten himself into. And that's exactly right. I think we're just going to take this time to attack his pawn. He's going to have to defend that pawn. And by the time he defends that pawn, we'd have made no difference here. I can attack his pieces anytime I want, it looks like. Cheers. I have myself a Hazy Little Things IPA. It's something that I've fallen into. Now I get these taller cans. You can get the 6-packs, but it's 6 of these IPAs. Not for me. I'll have one tall can. Thank you. Like I said, when I was guest hosting for the Blind Mike Project, that was a lot of fun. If anybody has any questions about that, now would be the time to ask. You certainly have that opportunity. But we, of course, were drinking those Twisted Teas at the time. Jerry, I wonder if he's been drinking those Twisted Teas recently. He's been still dealing with this COVID issue. It's really hit him pretty hard. I'm not sure. We have a lot of jokes, of course. I'm writing for this stand-up comedy because we're doing this reality show where I go out and I attempt to get into this stand-up comedy thing locally there. I have a good amount of jokes on this COVID thing. You can imagine. It's a very relatable thing, this COVID. Who is this wild man Chris? Would anybody let me know? And with a live show, I'd be a little worried. Maybe we have the opportunity to get a little more edgy here, a little off the books. Again, that night, very strange. He's moved that night, and I'm not sure. Are you able to see my mouse? That's tough. I'd have to go see if I have that cursor on. But he's moved that night from that starting position to a natural development to a weird space, and now he's back to that position. So I think that we've already gained a slight edge. I want to get my Dark Space Bishop out. I certainly do, but I'm not sure if there's something else I could be playing with right now if we have an opportunity. What is some of his weakest pieces? I have to ask myself, what are his weakest pieces? Well, I think that kingside pawn right next to his king seems pretty weak. We might be able to find something there, but I'm pretty blocked in. I guess we're just going to have to develop our dark side bishop and maybe castle. I think we're going to be looking for that, and everything should be going pretty smoothly here. You know what's interesting? I never had the opportunity to name a David Collins live stream. Now, can I name this live stream in any way? Does anybody know how this operates? I expected, we have this streaming software here. I imagined that once I would push live stream in this streaming software, it would kind of give me these options. It didn't. New timeout lengths, ranging from 10 seconds to 24 hours. I'm not sure any of this here. It's very strange. So it's all a learning process here. We're going to take this as kind of a learning opportunity and see how this all runs. David Collins writes, Hackride. Hello, Hackride. Welcome to the chat. We're just doing a little experiment here with how this live chat would operate, and I kind of thought I would offer myself up for any questions that the audience might have about what we're working on and what might be happening in the future. Of course, I'm a big fan of this board game chess, so we're playing a little of that this evening. And I think he's already given me a slight edge. We're winning on development. Not that I'm the strongest player able to kind of take advantage of that, but we'll see what happens. How long did I live in Manhattan? Well, that's an interesting question. I lived there most of my life. I actually wasn't born in Manhattan, Kansas, but I did move there when I was very young. So I was born and raised there. I didn't move out of Manhattan, Kansas until I was 27, I suppose. So, or 28, I guess. But most of my life, I've been there my entire life. Love to go back soon. Certainly. Well, that's interesting. He's just moving his bishop there. He's tempting me to just chase it out, but I think we're just going to continue to develop. I'm a little nervous about what he might be doing. He could at any point move his knight out and make a small threat over on my king side here, so I'm a little nervous about castling at this point, but I think we might just continue with it. Why don't we go ahead and just pace it out one more time. What he might do, if I move this pawn up here, what he's gonna do is he's gonna move his bishop over to this space right here, and that's gonna create a problem for me. So we want to kind of address that situation before we deal with that. And I think what we want to do then in that case is just go ahead and take this pawn up, take a second to breathe, see what he does next, and then we'll attack that bishop next. At least that's what I think. You know, if anybody has any suggestions, I'm not sure if that's against the rules, actually. I think I might have signed up to a terms of service that says I shouldn't be taking any suggestions, but maybe we can break those rules today. Like I said, we might get a little edgy this evening. Only lived a few places in my life, though. Of course, you know, like I said, pretty much all my time in Manhattan, Kansas, but it's been nice to be out here meeting all these brand new people in Iowa the last year. I almost can't even remember. It's something else how quickly things change and it just becomes your new reality here. Alright, let's go ahead and just kick that bishop out. I, of course, want a castle at some point, but if he hasn't picked a direction, why should I? Maybe I'll just end up keeping center king. The nice things about these low tier, of course, I'm only 1100 to a 1200 player in chess here, so we get to be a little wild. It's not the most precise play, so we get to have a little more fun. It's fun to see these viewer count go up and down. You're going to wonder, people go in, they see what's going on here. Oh, this isn't a live show. Of course, it is not a live show, and not the live show that I've been teasing, a live stream as it's been named. But like I've already mentioned here, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to be able to edit that, and I'm worried because the way that I've set myself up here, if I were to go to try to edit something on screen, I'd probably end up showing a lot of personal information, or even login details. Can you imagine how dramatic that would be? What a failure of a test if I were to try to test a live stream and I just immediately give my call-in details. Minus 200 for the ceiling fan, minus 300 for the backlighting, minus 400 for blinds being in the shot. You owe the Livestream Homeowners Association $900 for the violations on your first live stream. We accept checks. That's a fair point. That's a fair point, but what do we do about this bishop situation here? What I'm also concerned about is every electronic around me is currently dying, and I am not anywhere near the proper equipment to kind of deal with that. We are very unprepared, but I think this test has kind of been a success. Why don't we just see if we're able to... Is a bit loud. Oh, well, that's great. Catherine, thanks so much for commenting on the volume of the music there. It's kind of difficult to know, of course, from my perspective. I'm hearing a different range of volumes than you. You know, Hackride, although your criticisms, I'm going to have to take that the way I think those are good, honest criticisms here. I'm going to take one moment to just double check that this move is, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and chase down this bishop, and we're going to force some play in the center of the board. I would love to castle, but if he's able to go make the first move here, I have to wonder if that puts him at an advantage. No, I would love to move I would love if my bishop was just... Imagine if my bishop was right here in the center of the board. That would be fantastic. We're going to take this moment right now to castle, and then I think we're going to get a little more aggressive in this game. That's what it's starting to look like here. And then come back in the room. Sometimes it helps. Oh, do you think that there's a lighting problem based on me starting live in the room? That's interesting. That must be why a lot of hosts start the show outside of the room, and then they enter the room as a big entrance. That must have something to do with the lighting. That's an interesting point, Hackride. Oh, did I turn down that music? I think I did. Thanks so much for that comment. I'm going to change your name from Iowa Dave to Manhattan Dave, if that's cool with you. Well, that would make a lot of sense. Manhattan Dave would certainly be more appropriate, although I more commonly go by David, of course. A lot of people recently, especially on David Collins' 30-minute half-hour show, have been calling me Dave, and that's been interesting to kind of get used to. Fun fact there. So now that I've castled, I'm happy. I'm going to go ahead and just pursue this angle here. It looks like that he hasn't had the opportunity to really develop much, so we're kind of just sitting here making slow moves forward. We need to know at the exact second that doing it happens. Well, you have to remind me what that was referencing. I like your show, David Collins. Also, I don't think you should listen to Hackride. His comments don't seem very helpful. Well, thank you, Catherine. That's a great comment. I'll have to take that into consideration. Depending on the audience that you're speaking with, Hackride can be a very controversial figure, but I appreciate your input, and I'd love to hear more of it in the future. I'm not sure what Hackride is saying there, so we'll just leave it at that. Now we have to ask ourselves, did we trap the bishop? It looks like that we did not trap the bishop. He's just going to escape back into where that pawn was a moment ago. But we've certainly made progress. We have to be at an edge here. But what do we do next? Do we move? I think our next move certainly has something to do with this bishop, but I'm not sure what it might be. I see. What I'd like to do with this bishop, I'd like to target this line right here, and we have a good opportunity. This pawn is very well protected, so we're going to be able to protect it with this, so I don't need to worry about that rook. I think that's the direction we're going to go. The next step then will be getting that knight out somehow, although it seems pretty blocked. Maybe we could put our knight right here somehow, and that might help us, because I think I'm judging and I'm guessing that a lot of the play is going to happen right around here once we get into business. So that's what I'm kind of planning around, but we'll see exactly how it goes. How do you chess? That's a good question. Chess is a pretty complicated game. It's simple at first, but the more you learn, what's interesting about chess is this rating system. Now, this rating system, it ranges from the worst players in the low hundreds to the best players almost getting to the top almost getting to the bottom 3,000s. And what they say about this chess rating, how you judge how good somebody is based on that rating, is actually, now this is a mistake, certainly a mistake on his part there, but that's okay. So this chess rating is interesting. What they say is that if someone is 300 points higher than you by this chess rating, that 9 out of 10 times they'll beat you in a game. When you think about that, only 300 points, they're going to be beating people 9 out of 10 times. You're asking yourself, how high is this skill ceiling? I think it's a very interesting way to describe the ELO, and it really makes you ask how difficult it is to master a game like chess. This is a difficult move for me. I'm not sure exactly what I thought was going to happen here. Great music for this. If nobody has gone ahead and guessed the soundtrack there, but I'll keep it going. Hey David, do you ever do a bit where you act normal? Well, you'll just have to wait until that David Collins 30-minute half-hour reality show airs first. The first episode is certainly going to be public, but depending on kind of how we structure it and what we end up doing with it, we might put the whole show behind a paywall, that reality show that we're working on, but that's a big project that's going to be coming in the future. This is a difficult move here. I feel stuck. This is the part of the game, the mid-game. I really feel stuck in chess here. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do next. I want to do something with this bishop, but I want this line here, so I get a little confused and a little concerned. But what I'm going to do next here, we're going to go ahead, and I think we're just going to drop an easy check, because right now this bishop is not doing much. Let's just go ahead and look for an easy check. Checkers is more distinguished. You know, I would say checkers is more distinguished, but only if you call it droughts. What does the stash smell like? I don't think that's a very polite question. I do have an interesting single white hair growing into the mustache, but I'll tell you, it deserves a trim right now, but generally speaking, do a good job of keeping everything groomed in that area. How rude? That's a good point, Gopher. I agree. 24 hours sounds great. The David Collins 1440 minutes, 24-hour show. Make it happen. I've thought about that, and this is the first step. Testing a live stream like this to see how it operates is certainly the first step to identifying how we would even look into going about a 24-hour show. So I'm so glad that you're interested in that. It's certainly something that we've thought about and are continuing to think about in our journey. We just got to move the queen up. What we're doing right here is defending this pawn, of course, because that is the obvious threat that he's trying to impose. Do you wash the stash after coitus, or soak in the smell for a while like a conquering king? It's a tricky question. It's a tricky question, and I'm not going to really get into that right now. I believe, unfortunately, I don't need to disappoint you, and it's not for the reasons that you might think. I just don't think that that's very appropriate. You know, I would have loved, especially now that this queen is here, I would have loved to move that pawn up like I wanted to before, but now that the queen's here, if he takes, then we could have checked. We would have had a little more mobility. Now things are a little tricky, so I'm going to need to look at this board for a couple minutes. Or wait, was it college radio? Did you take broadcasting or school or just learn it when you worked at the radio station? Right, no, that's exactly right. College radio. Shout out KSDB at Kansas State University there. I'm trying to think of this move here, but to answer your question, I started as a copywriter in 2014 at 1015 K-Rock there, KMKF, in Manhattan, Kansas. But only a few years later, of course, I became that on-air personality, ended up working in afternoons before I was fired. At this point, we have to make some decisions because things are getting a little, well, for right now, things aren't too dramatic. I can calm down, I think, but I'm going to have to get this night out. We've made it through 17 moves now, and we've only gone one pawn and one pawn, so very tense. I want to play this game as sharply as I can for all of you, since I think based on the battery of life of everything involved, we only have time for this one game. So get your questions out now if you have any questions. Of course, like I mentioned, the main focus right now is David Collins' 30-minute half-hour live show, February 9th in Cedar Rapids, Iowa at the Lucky Cat. We're really looking forward to that, and that's going to be a great show. We have a lot of plans, and that's the next show that you're going to see come out on the channel. Following that, of course, we have a great show booked with another great guest, so February is going to be a good month. But throughout all this time, we're recording and putting together David Collins' 30-minute half-hour reality show, and that's going to be about my journey. Right now, I'm beginning to get a little more into stand-up comedy. I'm actually going to be hosting a mic this week, and that's exciting. So this is all being developed, and the goal at the end of this reality show is that I'll be headlining at a comedy club somewhere in the Midwest here. So we're talking to comedy club owners, or whatever you would call them, their managers, and we're talking to other comedians, and we're kind of starting that process to get me as at the end of the show, the end goal would be to see me headlining a club, and we think that would be a great show and kind of a great product to put out. So that's kind of what we're working on right now. Would you study in college? That's a great question. A gag reflex hack ride with very inappropriate questions. Excuse me one moment here. I apologize there. A very just a quick text that was a little embarrassing there, so I apologize for that. This is a very tricky move, and I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do next here. What he's doing, of course, is attacking this pawn a second time, and I'm able to defend it now that we've put this knight here, so I don't think I need to be too concerned, but he is offering some strange things. But now that he's let up that pressure, let's go ahead and continue to move on here. Hack Ride, well, I would love to ask you, as long as you're in the chat, I hope your show went well this evening. I noticed that it was not live, based on in the corner you had a not live sign, but in the other corner it did say live, so it was a little confusing. I think I just had to assume, of course, that not live was the correct thing. I've exposed this knight. This is my least favorite part of the game, this mid game, where we're just fighting we're fighting with some sort of tension here, but we've kind of blocked off our spaces, and we're looking for where are we going to trade, who wants to do the first move, how do we want to move our pawns when we take, and he's giving a real fight here. Now as white, he's really supposed to be leading the game. All right, here we go. But what would be next here? What is your plan? There's nowhere he can move this bishop, and it's certainly a strange situation there. Wanted to say I'm a fan of David Collins. Well, Toward the Unknown, thanks so much. I'm a fan of yours. It's a great show, and we're working on making it even better. Oh, that's why he moved that knight in that way. That's exactly right, and he got me with that. I was looking at that earlier, I was looking at that earlier. What I needed to do is have just taken his bishop with the knight in the first place. But I don't think that's going to be a major problem here. We're actually just going to look for... Why don't we just look for... What I would love to do is just look for a cheeky checkmate here now that I've completely fluked a full piece. It's terribly embarrassing, and it's a terribly difficult game. And then we can make this all a lesson on gracefully losing, I think. This is a real problem. Well, we have to do this first of all, but he has a bishop here. He has completely stumped me. I almost feel as though this is grounds for a resignation. I have completely thrown away this game in one single move there. In one single move. Had I only just moved this here, had I only done that one single move, this game was still in my favor. In one single move, I've thrown this game completely, and we can almost blame by itself that white pawn, that white bishop. Well, everything around me is dying, like I had mentioned. We just wanted to make this a quick test of the live stream. Fantastically easy, it turns out, so that was fun. Dungeons and Dragons with David Collins, Dungeon Master. I would hate to get into it there, but yeah, I've been personal witness to Dungeons and Dragons ruining many people's lives, and I would not want to participate in that. Why don't we continue try to salvage this game though, because there is a chance that he continues and it does fluke something here. So I'll do my best. We're gonna try to redeem this game as best I can. For never breaking that broadcaster character, Catherine, I was a popular person with my colleagues there. I of course wouldn't want to say anything like that, and it was nothing. I call it maybe an early sign of the times, but I'm not sure if you've heard it. We do talk about it on David Collins 30-minute half hour show, episode 3. We talk about it on the show, and I actually play those old clips from the radio station, so that's a fun thing to listen to. But it was just, and I also actually talked about it. I was on the Johnny O podcast this December. The Johnny O podcast is a long-form interview. It was interesting. It was a lot of fun to talk with Johnny O, and I would do it again. That was something I hadn't really been doing in a while, and it was fun to be kind of on a longer show like that in a professional studio. But we talked a little about my firing on that show too. Basically, just a poorly timed, what you might call a racial joke, did not end well for me. Game night with David Collins. That would be a fun genre. Maybe we could think about bringing that into the show, a game night with David Collins. Now, this is just a test of a live stream, of course, but I am a big fan of board games. Maybe we could play a variety of board games and think of a way to kind of incorporate that into a show format. These live broadcasts are so popular now, and you have to wonder what different things we might be able to do with that live opportunity. Well, it would be great if you caught that episode. Incidentally, that episode number 3, we have that out there, and it's a fun episode, of course, because it's our first solo episode. We wanted to have guests on the show from its inception, but I mainly focused on just putting out a show at first, and we said, I'm going to do a solo episode, and we can talk about some of the things that the new audience might not know about my history in radio. So that's a great episode, one of my favorites, I would say, just because, of course, we get to listen to some of those old clips and kind of reminisce on some of my favorite times in radio. One thing that frustrates me about the game of chess, though, now maybe he's streaming it and talking to his audience and is equally as distracted as I am. I, of course, am no one to speak, given that I've used 5 minutes more on my clock this game than he has. But when someone like him is in such a dominant lead, I, of course, often wish that they would just continue and try to make a move a little faster. But maybe that's just my personal take there. We have a real problem. I can't even begin to name how many problems I have right now. I'm just going to have to continue with this here. We have a real, I am beside myself with the issues that we're running into in this game right now. What I'd love to do, is get this pawn out of my face. Because we need to move our queen no matter what happens. The main thing here is we need to look for a cheeky checkmate. The name of the game here is get a checkmate that he doesn't see coming, because right now he has a lead on me. Now what I thought happened is that he had won a full piece. Apparently we traded out equally somewhere, so maybe I had a lead. Of course, like we mentioned about that hazy IPA earlier, I have been drinking. So apparently he doesn't have as big of a lead on me as I thought he did, but that single pawn could become an issue. We could look for a situation where I find one of these rooks slacking. What do the kids say? Lacking, slacking, shellacking. An arcade game. Actually, that's interesting that you bring up the arcade games. Maybe we'll incorporate that into our reality show. We could have a whole scene taking place at the arcade that's actually located in the same building as Chicago's The Comedy Bar in Dubuque, a great comedy club that we'll all be seeing a lot more of in the future here. We have a lot of options. It gets a little tricky here, but I need to move this queen. What's going to happen, though, the real issue is, as soon as I move this queen, he takes that knight. And as soon as he takes that knight, maybe we'll be okay. Let's go ahead and just proceed. We're eyeing it up. We're looking for a piece. Let's see. Let's get a little wild. We're getting a little risky, like I said. We have the opportunity here to play a little wild. If I may be blunt, the music's kind of a bummer. Oh, that's interesting. Well, that's some good advice. Why don't I see? It is a little bummer. Do we have any? Is it just get a little happy paced here? You know what I worry about, though? You know, you're always playing different music. I'd be worried, is there an issue? Will the stream just end abruptly? Well, I guess we only have a couple minutes left here. I can't play... Well, let's see. Why don't I just see... Why don't we just play my favorite album? Well, I guess that, you know, that's certainly more... A piano music could certainly be more of a bummer. That would be certainly of a bummer. Why don't we look for... This should be less of a bummer. I'm not sure. You know, you always just put in a few letters and that should pick things up. Well, you should certainly learn the full game of chess. It's very difficult how the pieces move. Well, that's the first part. Once you learn how the pieces move, then you can start to play. But then you run into, you know, there's so many patterns and so many things that happen. That's something I didn't expect. You know, once he takes this, he's now defending this knight. Not what I was hoping for, but at least we should be able to win this bishop, I imagine. We're all fighting a weird situation here, but we're going to see exactly how it ends up. I think we still have an opportunity. We're going to be able to press it. I do find myself in situations where, even though it's a big loss, they let themselves slack for just a few moments, and you run into an interesting checkmate, so that could certainly still come. We're not going to give up, and the battery life and everything is holding on, so we're going to be able to finish this game. We gave the live stream a good test, and that was great. Then we'll be able to just close off and maybe look into a better planned future. You know, when I pushed that live button, it just went live, and then we said, oh, well, I guess it's happening now. So here we are, of course. Cheers, everybody. Happy Friday. We made it to the end of the week. It was a tough week for some. It was a fun week for me. I actually had a very interesting week. We're going to get into it, and DC's CDs during the live show, a quick segment. But I was out of town auditioning, and that was a good opportunity. Nothing I think is going to come out of it, but we're always looking for new opportunities and kind of see what could happen. So it was been a fun, interesting experience week for me. Blind Mike enters the chat. Well, Blind Mike, hello. We're just doing a little test of how a live stream operates and seeing how things flow and how the machinery works and everything. It's good to hear. It's good to see from you. I hope you're excited for Friday. Happy weekend. And I'm looking forward to catching your broadcast this weekend. I believe it's a Sunday broadcast, a morning broadcast, although generally, of course, I catch it a little later, I think. Leave him alone, Mike. Do not turn him into that world. Oh, is he saying something inappropriate? I'm not sure if I'm getting all the chat here or just the top chat. Blind Mike, I don't think is turning me into anything inappropriate there. Oh, what's happening? Now he's going, this is an interesting take. So what he's decided to do, since I'm targeting now his bishop and his knight, he's going to go ahead and target my bishop. But I do feel strongly that we could still turn the. There's got to be something here for us. This couldn't all have been a wash. We could run into a situation with the discovered check here. If I looked for something to pressure, he's got that discovered check now with the knight, so we have some real issues there. I can take this pawn, of course, but we're not lining anything up with. We're not lining anything up here yet. If this was here, then we could certainly really look for some major pressure and a checkmate, but that's not how this is going to go. And all I'm going to do at the end of this exchange, if we went through this whole back and forth, is maybe win this bishop back. So we have a real problem with a lot of things going on constantly. If I take anything, if I could get my queen here somehow, then maybe I'd have some play, and that would... I guess we're just gonna have to go with risk it. We've already decided that this is a big loss. The thing is, though, if I move this, if I just go back here, he's gonna pressure this rook. If I lose that rook placement, he's just gonna give me a big run around here, and it's gonna be a long-term problem for me. If we don't just look for a major attack right now. So we're gonna get very aggressive and just see, can we sneak in a checkmate that he maybe doesn't anticipate coming here. Although I'm really giving it away by lining up this bishop. I'm sure if I did anything else, he would say maybe he doesn't see the checkmate. But if I line up this bishop, he's going to see this bishop. He's going to say, of course, the only line here that's just leading to this pawn, his only problem, his weakest piece, the only issue in his board right now. Maybe he won't see it. Maybe we can end up with a win here. But this has been a real loss, I gotta say. I thought we would play better. That one move threw everything into an issue, and it has not recovered up to this point. But it's good. Maybe we'll be able to get something back here. I'll tell you, if we got into an end game and he was only up by a pawn, I might count on. I get pretty lucky in some of these end games. Of course, like I mentioned, only 1,100 to 1,200 player, so a lot of people, a lot of room to make mistakes. Boy, this has been fun, though. It's great. These live shows are really an interesting interaction there. I really enjoy this. Now, Blind Mike, I'm glad that he entered the show. Of course, we have this David Collins 30-minute, half-hour live show coming up, and I'm very excited for that. But that Blind Mike was nice enough to promote it on his show, The Blind Mike Project. I was so happy to see that when Austin Ingalls, friend of the show, was on the Blind Mike Project. So that was great that he was promoting it, and I sent Blind Mike a nice thank you, saying thanks so much for even mentioning it on the show. It was very kind, a little promotion for that live show. Maybe we'll get a couple people from out of town. Wouldn't that be exciting? Now he's gone ahead and taken that free bishop that I had given him, and I have to assume that he's already decided how he's going to get out of this situation. Of course, he's going to move that pawn up. That will give me a check and the free bishop, and then we're only even in that little back and forth there, which it's not ideal. Not ideal for me. Want to join us Sunday? Well, let's see. We have many things that we need to do tomorrow, but I don't believe I have anything planned Sunday. I would be very excited to join and talk about a couple of whatever. Well, it might depend on the subject, of course. but I believe that I'd be happy to do so. I think that would be a great opportunity. And I would love to just mention that live show one more time. Of course, we're very much looking forward to it. And I'd love to promote this reality show that we're now that it's the end of January, we've actually been able to kind of jump into a little more seriously. And we have that planned out. The episodes coming and the recordings are already kind of in the works there. I'm going to be interviewing a couple comedy club owners, I think, coming up, and we're putting all that together. So we're really excited for that project, and I think it's going to be great. And maybe we'll even be able to succeed to get me to headline one of these comedy clubs in the Midwest. Wouldn't that be something? Talk about Stuttering John. Well, I could do a little research there. Is there anything interesting in that world, though? It just seems like an old man. Maybe. I'm not sure. Unfortunately, in my life, the only old men that I've really been around were at that station in Manhattan, Kansas. I've been a lot of young blood over where we're in my life the last year, but I'm not sure if Stuttering John is any different than any man that you might see at any pub down in Dubuque, Iowa here. It's an interesting subject, though. Is there anything new? No, there's not. Well, that's fun. Then maybe I'm not sure what we'll be talking about there. What would we talk about in the comedy news world this week? Well, is there anything new with Tom Segura? He had a new show. That 69 minutes, I think, was a new thing. Maybe that's something that's interesting to talk about right now. Did he give me the oh no, he's let things get weird. All right. Why don't we get a little weird? Looks like things are getting weird. Things are getting wacky, everybody. Let's see what happens next. This guy did not know how to deal. We could have just traded. He moves the pawn. He moves the pawn there. I move the queen. I get a check. He moves his king. I take the bishop. It's an even trade, but what then he does is that he could have moved his knight over here, and he would have had a free rook. He would have taken the rook. I take it back with the king, but then he's up even more value. I'm not sure why he's decided to go in this direction and really kind of leave me open to... Now I'm the one building momentum, and that's certainly not what he wants to see. So we even have this pawn here, which we could block your break, and we're staring at a checkmate here if he makes a mistake. So we may have managed to turn this game around due to his own blunders. Talking about Mark Norman and Chris D'Elia, two comedians that I'm great fans of. I would love to talk about those two comedians. I've actually heard about this. I haven't had the opportunity to watch this. I'm not... Soft White Underbelly. Now, Soft White Underbelly I've mentioned a few times because I use it as a comparison whenever I've talked with Cardiff Electric or Vinnie Paulino. Their show, Subreddit Surfing, I think is a lot like a real-time Soft White Underbelly. So I think that's a very interesting show format, and I'm a big fan of that subreddit surfing, although, to be fair, to be honest, I haven't kept too much up, but I am a fan of that show and of that format. That being said, Soft White Underbelly actually featured Chris D'Elia recently on their show. Apparently, I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. I haven't had the opportunity to watch it, but that would be an interesting thing. Maybe I'll catch up on that, and then we could talk a little bit about that Chris D'Elia. That'd be fun. I'd love to hear. You don't see him being interviewed that often anymore. You certainly haven't seen him. Has Chris D'Elia ever done Rogan? That would be an interesting thing to look up. I might have to look up Chris D'Elia's Rogan appearance, too. But that'd be great. I'd be happy to join the show and hear a little about Chris D'Elia and Mark Norman. Well, I certainly hope Mark Norman's not in the news for the same reasons. All right, well, that queen move is certainly an appropriate move. I would say that is the best move in that scenario. So now we have a big decision to make, I would say. A big decision to make. And what I want to do here, I really do just want to move this pawn up, take the queen trade. If that's what he wants to give, then I'll have my rook here, and we can defend this pawn. He'll have to move the bishop, but then this pawn is just open for him to take it, and then we're gonna have to do something over here. Let's do that, actually, because then I think I win. I think at the end of the day, I win that knight, and then I might actually be up a pawn at the end of that. He has this pass pawn, which is a big problem for me, especially considering he has this rook here just sitting behind that pawn. the entire time. So there's a big possibility that even if I win a trade here in a dramatic way, positionally, he's really put me in a bad situation, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get these pieces out in a way that's going to matter with this pawn that's just halfway down the board. So we're going to have to see exactly what happens there, but I'm not going to say that this is completely... I thought this was much more lost about 15 minutes ago, and I actually think we've kind of held on. The battery is also still holding on, so we've kind of made it here. Can you do that? Go an entire show with talking about him, without talking about him. AJ Drinks, you know, I'm gonna have to defend the Blind Mike here, Blind Mike Geary. He, as far as I know, as far as I've been watching his show, he's never talked about this Stuttering John fellow, and he's kind of kept away from that. I'm not sure if he had a history before, but I've never caught him up until he had friend of the show Carve Electric on his show. I actually didn't really catch him talking about that popular Stuttering John fellow. I see. Well, this was the fork that he was looking at, and this was the fork that I missed. I, of course, saw this check earlier, but I didn't put it together in my head that he was going to move that queen there. So I think with that fork that he's caught me on there, he got me good, and it was a good match. I tried to put up a little bit of a fight there, but I certainly lost it at around move 18 with this take. Let's go ahead and look back at this take. At move 19, exactly. I lost this game at move 19 with my take here. And I would say I threw the game at that moment. Certainly a loss at this moment. Turn 29, he gets this fork of my king and queen, and we can call it a game. But what a game it was. This has been a test of my live stream. This is fun. Like I mentioned a few times, a little more difficult and a little easier than I expected. A little back and forth, so a new experience, always great. David Ollie's has a great voice. That's great to hear. I'm not sure if you're referring to me, but I've heard that and I appreciate that. This show is soothing my hangover. Crisp D'Elia. Well, that's great. Joe, it's a little late to have a hangover. Cheers. Well, everybody who's joined the show, thanks so much for stopping by. This has been somewhat more popular than I expected. I'm not sure if it's the David Collins, if it's the chess, or if it's just a live stream on YouTube. These do seem to be a popular show format these days, so it's been fun to share. Thanks, everybody who joined the live stream today. I really do appreciate it. Of course, we just want to give that test and answer a couple of questions. We're looking forward to that David Collins 30-minute half-hour live show February 9th at the Lucky Cat in Cedar Rapids. Maybe I'll figure out something else that we'll do in a more plugged-in, battery-safe live show here. But this has been great. Everybody listening, I've been David Collins, and you've been the best.